can you believe it? The most clowned on game since Starfield has bombed massively. And maybe you could argue the last one was Concord, but that one just sort of came and went. If we're talking about games with a big conversation, did it fail or didn't it? With Starfield, there was delusions about Game Pass, meaning it was a success because people who had already subscribed were playing it or something. I don't know what that was all about, but we know for sure now that the Veilguard, despite some people saying that, oh, the IP name, the name itself, Dragon Age, prestigious, that will lead surely to a bit of success, at least 4 or 5 million copies sold or something. That didn't quite pan out. The game has been a total dud, commercially, as well as in terms of substance, and it's failed to meet what I would consider to be some pretty reasonable expectations from EA. Like, in the past, we've seen Square Enix, for instance, try and say in delusional fashion that Tomb Raider, that needs to sell 20, 30, 40 million copies. Then it gets nowhere near that, and they deem it a failure. And then they sell off really great IPs, like Deus Ex and so on, which that still annoys me. But there's delusional publishers who think that. But then there's EA, who I don't like, but in this case, I think they've been pretty reasonable. They were expecting that the Veilguard would get to 3 million players. It got to 50% of that, 1.5 million players, which means they missed the sales target, they missed the player number target by 50%. 3 million isn't unreasonable, because that argument about, hey, the Dragon Age name should have some appeal, even if the game looks like a total clown show, the original character reveal trailer, which was embarrassing. I think anyone who was sort of, yeah, Dragon Age, used to play it, it's pretty fun, Origins, Inquisition, whatever you liked, they were keeping an open mind, they might check this out, and then when they saw the companion reveal trailer, any hype was destroyed. No one was interested. It doesn't matter what BioWare say or what else they show in their marketing. That's when they just kind of lost everyone. There were people before that who were skeptical because of the development hell, which we'll talk about, but they lost everyone well before release. And I think that was the point where this game was always going to bomb unless it came out and it was somehow incredible. The reviewers tried to gaslight everyone. That didn't work because no one trusts them anymore. So they had nothing. The game bombed. It did horribly. No one can try and cope. And, oh no, but what about this metric and that metric? EA have admitted it failed. Their stock has crashed. And that's just kind of it. I don't think there's going to be much more news outside of this, except for maybe BioWare actually being shut down. There's been rumors. I think it may happen. In fact, it's getting closer to that being a reality. Because if we look here, and this is actually pretty recent, the sales numbers and stuff you might have heard about this, that happened a few days ago, but this news is pretty recent, where the Veilguard just received its final major update. That's what Eurogamer call it, but there's been no major updates really. We're talking about a few quality of life sort of updates and then also just some bug fixes, and they refer to that as a major update. That to me is just like a hot fix with maybe some extra bells and whistles. So it's not like a big team's been working on this, they're drastically trying to improve it like we saw with Baldur's Gate 3, which was getting some pretty substantial updates. In fact, are they still doing things? It seems like it. Every month or two, there seems to be something new. And even Cyberpunk, that's still getting updates. I think they've outsourced some of them, but they're still showing that game some love. So, good games, they normally get that post-release support these days. But the Veilguard, a bit like Andromeda, which another BioWare, Mass Effect, was meant to get a ton of new updates, even DLC, and then because it was a flop, they scrapped all of that. Now, the Veilguard wasn't going to get DLC, but you'd assume if it was an actual success, even just a positive sign for BioWare, that they're on the right track, they're improving as a studio, the dark days of Andromeda and Anthem and so on was behind them, doesn't look like it, because within a couple of months of release, they're not working on this game anymore, it's gone, and that can sometimes be the sign of, hey, the studio's about to get shut down, wrap everything up, it's time to move on because the employees are going to be out on their arse soon. So we'll see if it happens, if the rumors pan out to be true. I don't see how it can't be the case. These people have been massively incompetent for... You've got to go back to like 2013, basically. Inquisition, I think, was 2013. There was maybe some DLC after that people liked. But that was basically it. It's been a long time, and it's not like they've been improving either. If anything, it seems like things are actually just getting worse. There's no positive signs here, which, if you're EA, I mean, they're probably regretting that they just didn't switch the lights off after Anthem, because I honestly think that was the time to do it. Ideal world, sure, there's none of these activists in BioWare. They make a mistake trying to chase the live service stuff with Anthem, and they come back down to earth and go, you know what? Single-player games is our skill set. Let's get back to that. That's an ideal world, and they turn it around, and we get good games again, and we have a whole bunch of good RPG developers alongside CD Projekt Red, From Software, and so on. We get Golden Era BioWare as well. They're back. But unfortunately, we don't live in that reality. BioWare is just full of clowns, people who need to actually get out of the industry. I'm not sure how many people within BioWare haven't just been infected with whatever was going on with Veilguard, because it's just a creepy game. It's a very weird game. It starts from the top. The director, Corinne Bush, who obviously got fired or let go or left, as they say. But it's just clear that the culture at BioWare is so rotten that there was no way that things were ever going to improve. So they're just going from bad to worse, in my opinion, and all that's really left at this point, whether the studio gets shut down or not, we'll see, but the last-ditch effort is these remaining copers, because no one can pretend that the game was a quiet success, and oh no, EA just, they're loving us, the reviews were great, there's a silent majority that are loving the game. That was a narrative that was being thrown around. That's now completely out the window. You do have this, though, and this is where the cope is really starting, because they're in that sort of phase, that circle of life, where it's like anger, acceptance, whatever the little steps are. But whatever this one is, it's getting kind of sad, because someone actually just comes out almost honestly and says, what happened? Were the CHUDs right? Because the game actually was a failure? And every just regular person, they consider just regular people who look at something that looks totally lame and goes, this is weird, I don't want to waste my dollars I spend for entertainment on this crap. I'm going to consume something else that might be worth my time. If you say anything like that, or you've thought that, you're a CHUD in these people's eyes. There's something wrong in your head. You need to be a Redditor and think like these people. That will get you back on the straight and narrow. So they're now in this level of denial where it's like, for once, maybe a little bit of self-reflection of, hang on, are we the bad guys? Were we wrong? So this person says, were the CHUDs right? Doesn't get any support. Are you shocked that no one's in agreement that the CHUDs were right? Instead, everyone's just saying, no! The majority of the real loss is from EA losing the FIFA name, hitting their sales. So this person's trying to say, oh no, the reason EA stock price is down is because of FIFA. But that doesn't explain the Veilguard missing its targets. It's fine if they've made other mistakes, EA. It makes sense. Any publisher that would be dumb enough to give BioWare another chance after Anthem, and also allow them to see this through. Like, the Veilguard was in development hell. It was a live service, then it wasn't. It went through at least 3 different iterations, and at some point someone needed to pull the plug and go, I think the problem here isn't the direction we're going with the game. Is it multiplayer? Is it this or that? The real problem at the end of the day is the people making the game. And if you can't get that right, if you can't recruit good people, which you just can't, because again, the culture was so rotten, anyone worth their salt making games was not going to accept this crap, because you're signing up just to have a turd on your resume, basically. You come in, you work on it, and then you're struggling to get a job in the future because you're having to explain to your potential new boss, I know I worked on the Veilguard, but I wasn't responsible for all the bad things that lost us lots of money. I promise I can do good work, just give me a chance. So you're going to be on the defensive for the rest of your life, for the rest of your career, because you worked on this piece of crap. So anyone smart is not going to go and work at BioWare. It was obvious that was going to be a problem after Anthem for people. So only idiots would agree to work for this company. which is the real problem. And the people saying, oh, it's because of FIFA, it's got nothing to do with it. And then going on about executive bonuses, just a long rant about how executives get paid too much. That's fine if you feel that way, but this has nothing to do with Veilguard being a flop. You're just deflecting for other things because you don't want to admit that the CHUDs are right. That's what this is really about. Someone else says, nah, the CHUDs aren't right. 1.5 million players is an insane number of players for a game that is 100% single player. AAA publishers expect every one of their games to break sales records. Now, this is obviously just complete cope, because this person's trying to zoom out almost and say, just think about it. Just think, 1.5 million people playing a game. That's incredible. Don't think about the economic realities of how much the game actually costs to produce, how other games on the market are actually selling that have this budget. Just zoom out, forget about the context. 1.5 million's incredible. This is genuine fairyland, pure fantasy, because 1.5 million is pathetic with the name itself, the IP name Dragon Age. Just that alone should always reach about this number of people. Like, there's a decent sized fan base who followed the series, even despite some extended breaks, and I think some fumbling of just handling the franchise, changing genres almost every entry. It's action, then it's sort of more CRPG tactics originally, and that's what people loved. Like, it's been managed horribly, and yet it still has a fan base. And it was going to get 1.5 million at a minimum, no matter how bad this was. And we've seen rock bottom with the Veilguard, and yet it still hit this number. So the idea that, no, this is AAA publishers who are just wrong, they've got unrealistic expectations. Again, I think 3 million is super reasonable. If they came out before, if we just knew before the Veilguard ever released, and we'd found out from an insider or something that EA were expecting 3 million, I would have said, I think that's kind of a win for EA, that they're not setting themselves up for failure, setting BioWare up for failure. They're saying, we just want you to hit this number. It's a good starting point for you to maybe rebuild, bring in a new fan base of gamers as you improve your studio and start making better games again after what happened with Anthem. I would have said that's a good target, but they failed to meet that by 50%. And that is so bad that you can't keep this studio open. After 6 years of development or something, it's absolutely pathetic with all the resources, support that they had. They chose to make a piece of crap and make bad decisions that led to that. So people like this, they're just in pure denial because they don't want to accept that people that they disagree with politically might have been right about something. It doesn't matter what you say. If they disagree with you politically, you have to be wrong about absolutely everything. Even basic facts, like this was a failure, and it's just a failure on its merits. It's got nothing to do with EA's expectations. It's a genuine failure. And this just goes on and on. No, the game, no, CHUDs, I hate CHUDs. Their expectations, EA's, were stupid. For a game that's pieced together from twice rebooted game as a service title that completely changed its gameplay style and writing style, being released by a company whose biggest well-regarded hits are almost a decade old, Veilguard did phenomenally. EA just expected ridiculous numbers for some reason. Who is to blame for all this? Are you just going to pin it all on EA and say, no, it's their fault it got rebooted? It probably got rebooted because the work BioWare were doing previously sucked. And the game wasn't shaping up well, because this is a developer who's just not capable anymore of actually making a decent title. They're a bad studio full of bad people who just need to be moved on, and preferably very, very few of them. I don't know if there's any good apples, sort of just a handful of unfortunate people who've gotten caught up in the chaos who maybe can do good things. Maybe there's a handful, but most of them need to get out of the industry. They've proven that they can't do anything of any sort of competency. It's just how it is. We've seen it. And you see this as well. The failure of Veilguard, do you think Mass Effect is BioWare's last chance before EA shuts them down? So we're in this territory where, oh no, this next one's their last chance. Surely they can turn this around. It's gonna happen. That sort of sunk cost fallacy or something, that like a gambling addict or something, where no, just one more roll of the dice. It's gonna happen. No, this studio has been failing for years and years, and the cope here gets even worse. Have they gone downhill, BioWare, or have you been listening to too much YouTube and Twitter on hating their new stuff? I've been playing since KOTOR 1 as well, but that doesn't mean anything new actually sucks to play. Are you kidding me? There hasn't even really been anything to play because they've taken so long to release games because the amount of cancellations and just general fucking around in development. Like Anthem, I think it was put together in about a year, but BioWare spent like 4 years just twiddling their thumbs, doing absolutely nothing around the office. And then eventually an executive noticed and said, hey, you've done nothing. You need to do something, please. And then they cobbled Anthem together. And what was it? The only good thing about it was the jetpack or flying around or something. Everything else was hopeless. There was no content. There was barely anything to do because they did no work on the game. So just that in itself is them going downhill. They can't actually produce anything. If you enjoyed Andromeda, power to you, but I think there's been a few better games since then, and there's expectations there. People have enjoyed BioWare since as far back as Baldur's Gate 2. I think that's a phenomenal game. It's like a 10 out of 10 CRPG. It's packed with content, like hundreds of hours in that game of just high quality things to do. Every new area, every quest, every character. It's really, really interesting, that game. It was very innovative for its time. To see them go from that to this, it's downright sad. This is pure denial if you don't think they've gone downhill. And people even call this person out, and these are mostly copers. This is the BioWare subreddit, for fuck's sake, and people are calling this person an idiot. And we'll end with this one, because rather than just cherry-picking a few, like, genuinely unhinged people with half a brain cell, we'll pick someone who's tried to make a better argument. He is acting impartial, but I don't think a lot of these people actually are impartial. They're just pretending, as we'll see. So he says, the way I see it personally is that there are a few cases in media where marketing does push their product as being pro-diversity, and that's a highlight to promote a mediocre at best product. And the anti-woke crowd hyperfixates on this as the sole reason for failure. So he's trying to say that there'll be something like Concord, where it's obviously full of DEI stuff, we'll say, and then it flops miserably, and then the anti-woke crowd says, oh, it only flopped because of all the weird stuff, like the overweight characters and so on. But then, no, that's not really the reason it failed. That's the grifters saying it. It really failed because it's mediocre in general. The gameplay wasn't that good, or the genre, there's too many games in that genre. But as we saw with Concord, that was a flawed bullshit argument, because Marvel Rivals comes out. I personally don't give a shit about Marvel Rivals. I couldn't give a toss. I just don't care for live service games anymore. I can't be bothered. But as far as I can tell, there's a lot of people playing that game. Similar genre. It just so happens the people behind it aren't trying to push some sort of political agenda. They just tried to make They just tried to make a great game. They just tried to make the best game possible and make designs. They just tried to make the best game possible with character designs that might actually appeal to someone. So basically that. So this idea of, oh no, there's all these other reasons. For me, it's excuse making. If people open their eyes, it looks crap. No one's saying it's good. There's no positive word of mouth making up for the fact that it looks crap. It looks uncool. That's probably the reason it failed. Just open your eyes, use your ears. What is the most likely reason? It's probably your first instinct is why it failed, which is the weird characters and so on. Can inclusivity be poorly done? Absolutely. Is it occasionally shoehorned on characters or period pieces where it probably should not have been? Sure. Is this the result of some intentional agenda to steal franchises and own the CHUDs? Probably not. Now, this is where it's someone sort of trying to appear impartial, but then just sort of shows their true colors, I think. Some people get a little fanatic about seeing right-wingers, anti-wokes cry, but honestly, sometimes things are just poorly made. What this person doesn't get is he's right to an extent that, sure, sometimes it's not purely the bad character designs. There were other things that were bad about a game, maybe, and it failed. Like the Veilguard is an example. It's not purely weird characters or having to do push-ups because you misgendered someone. There's a lot of other bad things about the game that have nothing to do with the politics. The thing that this person, and I think a lot of people who talk about woke or anti-woke stuff, what I think a lot of them miss is that the problems go way beyond just, oh, they've put some diversity in the game or they've checked a few boxes and now it's all ruined. That isn't really the issue. It's the fact that if you have developers, a group of developers, and a culture that is festered in that studio to promote that, to put your political views first before anything else, you're not really thinking about making the best game possible because you put your own personal politics as the priority. It's rarely going to be a handful of people. It's top down. It's probably the director on the game, for instance, or senior people on the game. Those people then start to only hire people who share their views. Suddenly you have zero diversity of thought in that studio, and it's just a big hive mind. It's basically a subreddit as a gaming studio, which is why a lot of these people use Reddit and similar places with heavy moderation, because they just want everyone to think like them, and everyone else is wrong. And what that then leads to is when you're building the game, every single system, whether it's combat, the writing, it could just be basic mechanics, that you can't DEI these mechanics. It's just like a science. It's like something that either works or doesn't work. It's got nothing to do with DEI. You can't interpret it in those sorts of ways. But what happens is all of that starts to just suck a little bit and rust away a little bit because everyone in that studio, the goal they're working towards isn't making the best game possible. It is to produce an educational piece, essentially, something that's going to change minds, change the world, just that little bit. Maybe make young, impressionable people think that little bit differently, pass that on to their friends, their kids, and so on. That is, at the end of the day, some of them might not be thinking that consciously, but at the back of their mind, that's kind of what is happening when they're pushing their own political agendas in their game. And they're probably not doing this. They're not having like a conspiracy meeting in the office about, we're going to destroy the game and we're going to make sure that regular toxic gamers hate this game, we're going to ruin it for them. Maybe some of them do that. I'm sure like Sweet Baby Inc., that's sort of just a daily thing that they would do around the office. But for just the average studio, like Spider-Man 2, or you think of something really mainstream like that, that is kind of just eroded, the quality is eroded because of this sort of thought process. It's just a culture thing. You bring the same people in with the exact same mindset, the exact same view of the world and ideas, and things just get that little bit worse. So it's not purely because if they've ticked some diversity boxes, it is a culture thing. And when you see a game like the Veilguard, where all of this is dialed up to 11, you know that that studio's culture has just hit absolute rock bottom, that the competency for anything at that studio is basically gone. It's just a red flag. They're waving it. We can see it with our eyes and ears. And that's why so many people, before that game came out, no one was even sort of disappointed by that point. I think most of us had got to that point where it's like, hey, at least we'll get some entertainment out of this by laughing at it. No one had any hope once they saw the state of that game, the companion trailer. It was totally doomed. BioWare are doomed. I'm just waiting for the official announcement of that main BioWare team to close down. Maybe the MMO, Star Wars, Old Republic, that'll survive. That'll be the last remnant of BioWare. But I think that's going to be it. The old days are over. If you're nostalgic about Mass Effect, Origins, Baldur's Gate, I think we've reached the end. And we'll leave it there. Thanks for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.